My name is Omar, and today I'm going to persuade you using Monroe's motivator sequence on why parents should shy their kids away from contact sports. And when I say contact sports, I don't mean the NHL or soccer or basketball or any of that. I mean the football. Now, I'm an avid football fan myself. I'm a Carolina Panthers fan, and my favorite player is Cam Newton. And Cam Newton last year was absolutely pummeled in the year of 2016. I mean, he was pummeled in the NFL, and he had numerous calls that were not called against him, where he had taken shots to the head after the play had ended, or during the play, and he had never received a call. And later on in Cam's life, he may suffer from these things. He may get CTE, which we'll talk about later on in this video, or he may have some kind of mental disorder because of all the physical trauma he's experienced. Now, I ask you as an individual watching this video, would you sacrifice your own personal health for a lifetime worth of wealth? And when I say a lifetime worth of wealth, I mean millions and millions of dollars beyond your wildest dreams, where you'd set yourself up, your family up, your kids up, your kids' kids up, for generations to come, in exchange for your body, your mind deteriorating at the age range of 40 to 50 years old. Now, a lifetime worth of wealth is very enticing, but I would never personally sacrifice my life, my health, because if I did accumulate all that wealth, what do I gain if I'm not there to experience it and enjoy it with my family? Especially if I have started to develop mental disorders and can't even recognize them or my friends or family. I could never do it. Now, the NFL has become a more offensive-oriented system where now in the NFL there's offense, there's defense, there's special teams, but nowadays the rules in the NFL have kind of leaned towards the offense a little more, where the offensive football players are a little more protected than defensive players. Of course, offensive players can still get penalties for hurting or hitting a defensive player, but usually the injuries occur from a defensive player hurting a offensive player. Now, in the NFL, the worst injury that usually players can get right nowadays is a concussion. A concussion is essentially when you experience physical head trauma and your brain essentially rattles around in your head. Now, in the NFL, a few years ago, the NFL players from the earlier generations had sued the NFL because they were never educated about the issues with concussions. Now, with concussions, with the more concussions you receive or have had inflicted upon you, the worse your mental health becomes. And then eventually, with all the head trauma you suffer, you develop something called CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is essentially clumps of protein called tau would eventually accumulate in your brain. Now, if you have a tau accumulating in your brain right here, you start to lose control of your mental health and your physical health. And it becomes to a point where you don't even have control over who you are. You start to become paranoid. You start to become scared. You start to lose your memory. You just become someone that you're not. It almost becomes like you're someone else, and then you become like a child. So CTE usually strikes someone down, or you start to see the symptoms within someone's late 20s or early 30s. And if it's left untreated, it could eventually lead to death, which is a worst case scenario, or even worse, mental illnesses. Now, a player named Junior Seau recently, I don't want to say recently, but within the last couple of years, actually committed suicide. And after his brain was taken for research, they found that he was developing CTE, or he had CTE. Now, he was a great player in his time. He was, I believe, a Hall of Fame player. And if a Hall of Fame player like him himself can develop something like that, who's to say some of these younger guys that aren't even Hall of Famers, that are barely playing in the NFL, that just receive a couple headshots, they just end up getting hurt. Now, if you were to tell me that I could make millions doing that, again, I would never do it. But it's enticing to someone young, especially someone who's coming out of poverty, to say, hey, you know what, I'll throw you $10 million, but there's a chance you could end up getting CTE. Well, if someone coming from a poor family who really needs it, that's a lot of money. That's something you could really use. But again, CTE and concussions are some of the worst injuries you could have. On top of the fact that in the NFL, in football, because of the new turf issue, the new turf, the new cleats that are coming out, a lot of players get hurt with non-contact injuries. They'll just be playing, running a drill in practice, and all of a sudden they take a stomp. Their foot will get planted into the turf, and then as soon as they make a twist, because their cleat hasn't released off the turf, they actually end up tearing an ACL or breaking an ankle because your body just can't contort in that shape or in that angle. So you end up tearing a ligament or breaking a bone. And it is, again, it's not something you can control with the physicality of the game. But again, why even, if a parent were to show these kids some of these videos of these injuries, or just explain to them, you could get hurt just running on the practice field, would you as a parent want your child to have to experience that? I personally am not a parent, and I would never want my child, my son, my daughter, my brother, anybody to have to feel that kind of pain, or just to know that if you choose this kind of lifestyle or this kind of sport, you are going to get hurt. And it's one of those things in the NFL where no matter how healthy you may seem, every NFL player plays hurt. There's not a single NFL player that's just been completely healthy with not a single scratch, or not. Every NFL player plays hurt in some capacity. Now, the risk of injury again has increased because of the fact that the game has become faster. The game has become a lot faster because players have become faster. Nowadays, players who are 6'7" and 290 pounds run 4 or 5 40s. And when I say 40, it's a 40-yard dash, which is usually timed at the NFL Combine. And if a player that's 6'7" and 290 pounds runs a 4.5 40, that's incredible. That's amazing. That's when they time some of these guys at the Combine at that size. A guy who's 6'7", 290 pounds coming at you at 25 miles per hour, that could kill you if you aren't prepared for it. Now, with the speed of the game becoming so crazy, and because of all the things that players have taken to become faster and stronger, a player could end their career at any time. A player could be, just calling a play, calls hike. A quarterback, could be calling hike, could be in the pocket, hanging out, about to throw a pass. A guy hits him and drills him, and the guy breaks his neck and he's out for the rest of his career. And the NFL career, I believe, or rather I know, is most likely to end at any time because of how physical and how fast the game is. Now, it's not even just end their career in terms of not being able to play. It could actually affect your livelihood as well. If a player breaks his ankle or breaks his leg, he takes a year off to rehab and gets stronger, and his bone gets stronger, and he comes back ready to go. But if a guy blows out his knee, not even blows out his knee, if a guy breaks his neck or hurts his spine, there's a chance he could never recover from that. Most recently, and most notably, a linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers named Ryan Shazier ended up hurting his back because he didn't know how to tackle someone. He went down, his head, essentially the crown of his helmet, almost got stuck into his neck, like it pressed into him, and he ended up having a spinal injury. And in that spinal injury, he ended up missing the year, and potentially he may never play football again. Now, I wouldn't want to personally ever be in a walker or in a wheelchair, so I could never do it for myself or to my family. So, again, the pros and cons of playing football are, again, you make a lot of money doing it, and you can become very famous, and there's a lot of glory to it. But at the end of the day, it's really not worth throwing your life away, your physical and your mental health, for a few $1 million. Even though $1 million is a lot of money, especially nowadays. But I could never have someone or ask someone in my family to do that, or ask my son, or try to tell my son to do that. Now, to wrap this up, in terms of health versus wealth, it's really up to you. Would you really sacrifice your life or your mental and your physical livelihood for an insane amount of money? The injury risks that come with this sport, with football, which is, again, the most dangerous sport to play nowadays because of the physicality and the speed of the game. Of the possible alternatives, you can always reach out to your children and tell them to try to play other sports. But at the same time, if a kid really wants to play a sport, there's really nothing you can do to stop them. But the only thing you can do is just try to persuade them and show them all the cons of playing this great but horrible and scary sport. Thank you for your time.